So let's get right into it. It's the morning after, bittersweet feeling, lots of emotions all over the place. We're joined, as you can see, by Professor Kola Kazim, former Provost, College of Education, now University of Education, Ogun State. He joins us this morning virtually. And we have an education and human resource professional, Yomi Fawemi, joining us from Canada. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the program. As I said, it's mixed feelings across the country right now, particularly for the students who wrote the UTME, particularly the ones who will be writing or rewriting it, and their parents, guardians, educational service providers, all of the people across that value chain. So I'd like to get your opening comments, and I'll begin with Professor Kola Kazim, because you've been at the very top as well. When issues like this happen, a lot of people say there needs to be more. An apology is great, but a lot of people are calling for much more. So what more must be done to restore trust in that system? Because this is at the foundation of whatever it is that we're trying to build as a nation, education.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I will start by saying that if you see a 70-year-old man cry on live television, that should speak volume. That tells you that the situation is beyond what he feels should be. And that tells you how pained the situation is. And we should then understand that whatever has happened will be based on human error. So we must, from that perspective, be very circumspect in the way we react, in the way we want to kill the ants with a sledgehammer. We have reasons to revisit and review the process of our admission and all of those things, and even the educational system. But then we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that you can't, because you have a headache, chop off your head. We must take some steps back, look at what the situation is, and seek to find ways of sorting it out. I am one of those who believe that we can't continue to change all of the things we have because we have some mistakes. We must build on it. We must find a way of sorting those things out so that at the end of the day, we will get, if it is not near perfect, we'll get something that is at least acceptable across board. Those are my first comments. Thank you.
Let me go over to Mr. Fawemi. Thank you, Prof. And same question, really, but maybe you bring in the global best practice into this one. Prof has said, well, yes, human error. Other people have said, well, when some of the students make human error in the examination, their results are final. There's no revisiting, there's no call for clemency in that sense. So when it comes to global practices, this error has happened. There's been an admittance, there's been an apology, even tears. Responsibility has been taken. What more must be done to restore trust in the system?
Okay, thank you for the question. Really appreciate. Thanks to my colleague, the professor who spoke earlier. For me, I have a couple of concerns because of the fact that this error, as it is called error, was not discovered because JAMB did enough self-introspection. If you read the press release by the JAMB registrar, he had said that they have noticed something went wrong while the exam was going. I'm concerned that JAMB noticed something was not right and did not immediately stop the exam. If you remember that we had an election in Nigeria, for example, where INEC discovered on the day of the election that something was going wrong, and they stopped the election and then postponed it. I'm concerned that JAMB did not have the capacity to, did not have the strength of character to identify the problem and stop the exam. I'm also concerned that JAMB released the results while it was aware that something was not going on. And I'm also concerned that if you check the press release that was done by Professor Dr. Fabian Osuji, and then the one released by this, the registrar yesterday, both of them said their response is because of the outcry. For both of them, they said, well, and this is what they have done over the years, that after the 3 stages in the JAMB process, in the UTME process particularly, there's always a look back or a review. They said this time around, all they are doing is they are making the review closer. It's not as if they have not always reviewed, because some people say, oh, JAMB listens to the people. JAMB always does this review. The only thing they did this time was to do it much closer. And according to the 2 men, it was because of the outcry and the amount of complaints. So I'm concerned that if people did not complain, I'm concerned if people did not send a freedom of information request. I'm concerned if people did not threaten a court action. Would JAMB have carried out this review early enough? Remember, JAMB would have carried out a review maybe sometimes later in the year at the point in which nothing can be done. So my biggest challenge with all this process, and I like the fact that JAMB owned up and apologized, is the fact that as a learning institution, you know, there's a difference between an institution of learning and a learning institution. A learning institution is an institution that has a capacity to learn as it goes along. I think JAMB has that weakness. The other thing I'm really concerned with, and personally, I wrote a message to JAMB like 2 weeks ago, and I said, JAMB, this is a CBT exam. The design of a CBT is for you to get the result as soon as possible. I gave them data. Before we had this registrar come on board, JAMB was able to release results 48 hours after the exam. A couple of years back, this registrar, due to his execution excellence, was able to release the JAMB result within 24 hours. And I asked the question, you have started this JAMB, today makes it 1 week, you have not released the result. What is the problem? And they didn't respond. So for me, it's a lack of ability of JAMB as an institution to be a self-correcting, a quick and agile organization that can recognize a problem, have the strength of character to correct it and to move on. It's not fair that 300 and something thousand students got results they shouldn't get. It is not fair to those students.
I'd like to follow up on that with Professor Kola Kazim to look at the viability of the exam itself, particularly, you know, with the flurry of reactions that this has generated from students who failed in error, to debates of the past about the need for the review of the JAMB template. And many have compared it to the equivalent that is done in the United States, that would be the scholastic exam, which is done about 7 times in a year, and the result is valid for at least 7 years. But time and again, our own students have to, you know, sit for that exam again after they have failed it. Perhaps maybe they are unable to, you know, secure the required cutoff mark for the course that they require. Prof, I'd like you to weigh in on this in light of these complaints that have trailed this very critical exam in recent times.
Thank you very much. Ordinarily, our situation is a little bit funny when you look at it. How did we come into all of this, and particularly with regards to the layers of examination that students have to do before they get admission? For instance, after writing the JAMB, you go for UTME. These are evidences of lack of trust in the quality of what is coming out of JAMB, for instance. Not about JAMB in particular, because when this registrar came on, he has at least done a number of things aimed at standardizing the examination. And for, aside from this error, which we all know that it could be something, we all condemn it.
We'll land on his thoughts. Prof, can you hear us? Okay, let's take it to our other guests who will also do justice, Mr. Yomi. Let's talk about beyond the rewriting, the errors and all of that will happen. We're also looking at some of the distress that these students will have to go through, because they have other exams to write as well. But the prof has said he's talking to universities and the colleges to see what they can do to accommodate this, because everything is time-bound. I want you to talk to us about
we still have about 1.2 million if you do the maths, or let's just say 1.1, or over 1 million people out of 1.9 who scored below 200, which is the average mark or the half points in this sense. Talk to us, when you hear that data, are you concerned about going to school versus learning?
Okay, great question. I think one thing I will need to quickly respond to is to know that for us to recognize the difference between an achievement exam and a ranking exam. An achievement exam is an exam that tests your competence in a subject. For example, WAEC NECO is an achievement exam. It tests your knowledge of a subject. A ranking exam, like JAMB, is a test that is designed to rank candidates. So that is why in an achievement exam, you can pass or you can fail. So that's why there is a F9 in JAMB, in WAEC. That's why there's an A1, that's why there's a B2. In JAMB, because it's a ranking exam, there is no fail mark. That's why you don't fail JAMB, because it's a ranking exam. The goal is to know number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4 for all the 1.9 million or 2 million that wrote the exam. Therefore, that fixation on 200 as 50% is not a fair thing to focus on, because the goal is not to see who got above 200. In a ranking exam, that's not the goal. There's a whole section of education called measurement and tests. And part of what you are taught in measurement and tests is when you are designing a ranking exam, your goal is not to look for pass or fail. Your goal is to look for ranking. Now, if we focus on the 200, then we miss a point, because we are now applying an achievement measure on a ranking exam. Personally, I'm not too bothered with who got over 200 or not. I actually think, remember, if we had enough space for all those that wanted to go to our institutions, we wouldn't rank them. The reason why we are ranking them is because there is not enough space. I also, and let me use that to segue to the question you asked the professor earlier. I've taught in 5 higher institutions around the world. Nigeria is the only country where people write 3 exams to go to a college. In Nigeria, you write WAEC. If your parents are rich enough, you write NECO. If you are rich enough, you write GCE. Then you write JAMB. Then you write post-UTME. I don't know anywhere else in the world where students write 3 external examinations to gain admission to a college or to a university. In the US, you write your SAT. You can write it many times. So it's important for us to go back to the history, and I wish that was where we started from. The conditions that led to the creation of JAMB has changed. And let's be very real with ourselves. Remember, it wasn't the federal government that created JAMB. It was the Committee of Vice Chancellors that made a request for an examination body. And then the federal government decided to set up a committee to recommend a solution on university admission. The committee recommended 2 different bodies, one a matriculation body and one an examination body. Submitted a report to the military government in 1978, and the military government merged the 2 and created Joint Admission and Matriculation Board. If you notice, the word exam does not exist in the name of JAMB. Compare it to WAEC, West Africa Examination Council. Compare it to NECO, National Examination. The word exam does not exist in JAMB because that is not the primary purpose of JAMB. There are 5 rules that JAMB has as mandate, of which writing exam is just one of it. There are 4 other mandates it has. But because we have now decided to focus only on the exam, that's why we're having the problem we're having. The biggest responsibility of JAMB is to get people to universities and our institution. And let me ask you this question. Check the data in the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. JAMB hasn't been able to get people into higher institution because that clearinghouse role of JAMB, if you look at it, JAMB is a kind of a stock exchange where there's supposed to be enough transactions that facilitate access to higher institution. JAMB has not been effective in that direction. So I tell people, we all talk about the exam and we'll talk about the exam, but the real role of JAMB, or the role of JAMB that is irreplaceable, is that sorting and getting people to higher institution. I'm going to just say the last thing about this. If you go to Canada as comparison, Ontario, for example, when a student gets to year 12, He writes his school exams. He will have been writing from his year 10. He writes his school exam. That child does not do any other exam to go to university in Canada. There is no WAEC equivalent in Canada that he's going to write. There is no JAMB equivalent that he's going to write. There is no post-UTME equivalent. Now, that is what happens in Canada. Let's go to UK. Think about a girl who attends Queen's College in Sabo in Lagos. If a girl, the closest school to Queen's College is the University of Lagos. If a girl wants to attend a university in UK, what does she need? She will write WAEC in her school and send that WAEC result or WAEC structure to the university in the US, in Canada, in England, and she will be given admission with only a WAEC. If that same girl who attends Queen's College wants to go to UNILAG, which is just a few kilometers down the road in Akoka, that girl will write WAEC, she will write NECO, she will write JAMB, she will write post-UTME. Question, why is it that that girl needs to write 3 exams to go to a university in Lagos that is poorly ranked compared to a university that is in top 20 in the world? Why is WAEC acceptable by Canada, by England, by UK, by Wales, by Australia, by the USA? But in Nigeria, that we have a NECO, we have a WAEC, those things are not sufficient to gain admission. We are just burdening young people with unnecessary exams. That doesn't help. And
Well,
that's
Mr.
what we need to stop.
You have made such vital points, and I think naturally we should let Prof speak on this one. Why are we making life difficult for students, it would seem, having to cross these different hurdles just to get into university? By the way, as he said, in global best practices, this does not happen. So is it like a Nigerian thing just to make life tough, make it more difficult than it is already? Prof, I'd like you to speak to that. And should we just abandon this entirely and be more progressive in our approach to university admission? This is for Professor Kola Kazim.
Well, sir, I always take exception to this issue about making something look as if it's a Nigerian thing. I believe that, yes, we make mistakes. We have problems with certain things that could be technical. And I always want us to look at the positive side of anything. If we are not doing it well, how can we do it well? It is not about condemning it. And I feel that each time we make it Nigerian, it pains me. Nigeria is not all that about negatives. And JAMB has not continuously been on the retrogression. This one came in, and I feel that people should take responsibility about it. I agree with my colleague when he says, when he talks about the challenges and the way we should go about it. I agree with that totally. And I feel that we can still up the game. The present registrar had put us at a particular level. And whoever is responsible for all of these infractions should be dealt with. And because one of the things that we have here is that each time there are infractions, there are no consequences. And consequences must be given. And some children have been punished unnecessarily, unjustifiably. So we should find a way of ensuring that something does not repeat itself. And not that it is a Nigerian thing and it must, no, it shouldn't be. Nigeria should be seen as doing it right, and we must work towards that. And we should not be all of the negative. There are things that works for us, and we must do it that way. We must support the registrar to make all of the amendments that are necessary so that we don't have such things repeat itself again. Every year we should have something that is giving us an improvement, not that we should be retrogressing. These are my words for that now.
Making JAMB more viable and to fulfill the purpose for which it was established in the first place, would you support calls for a reduction in the number of hurdles that students have to cross before they get to higher institution, and especially to make the JAMB result valid for more than 1 year?
Well, by law, JAMB result is valid for 3 years. It's supposed to be valid for 3 years. It's there. It's not something that is new. And if anybody is not allowing that, then it means it's an aberration. I mean, if you have a certificate and for one reason or the other you cannot go, it is valid. It's supposed to be valid, and that is the law. You are not. It's not a favor. It's not that it is 1 year thing. Go and look at the policy statement of JAMB. It's 3 years. In fact, people are suggesting that it should be moved up to 5 years. So anything that anyone who is resisting and rejecting children submitting their result, bringing up their results after 1 year, is doing the wrong thing, and it should be sued.
All right, Prof, apparently there's a long walk to freedom in that sense, but we must take all the lessons therein. Mr. Ayomi, in closing, how do you think that in going forward, all of the things that has happened should be approached, especially given the inundation of exams that we have at hand?
For me, I think one of the things we shouldn't do is that we shouldn't call for the sack of Professor Oloyede. One of the things you want to do as a manager is that when people make mistakes, you make them learn from it and make them improve it. So I don't support the call for the sack. I also think it's important for us to start to educate JAMB on its responsibility to society in such a way that is more people-centric. I was very concerned that when Professor Oloyede was speaking yesterday and released the press statement, he never made a comment about the girl that allegedly committed suicide because of her JAMB score. I was taken aback because I expected that should be so. Even though as of now you may say we can't say what caused it, but there should be some human face to that. Every time JAMB has a problem, JAMB takes a process approach, not a human approach. And that's typically the case when the leader of the organization is more tasks versus people. Again, I tell Nigerians every time I get up, we know Professor Oloyede from his days as Deputy Vice Chancellor, University of Ilorin, from his days as Vice Chancellor, University. I was a member of ASU. We went on a national strike while he was Deputy Vice Chancellor and when he became a national. A case went to court. The case of the Ilorin 49 or 47 was Professor Oloyede played a central role there. When people are process-driven, task-driven versus people-driven, they likely will make a lot of mistakes, particularly when they are dealing with vulnerable people, and young people are vulnerable people. Check every time JAMB gets into a scandal, there's a way it approaches things, whether it's a case of Mensoma, whether it's a case of one student making an allegation. Every problem that JAMB has identified today, which they have done well in doing, could have been solved if they choose another people approach to it. The last thing I want to say related to that is that there's a need for us to have a conversation in Nigeria. Nigerian students should not write 3 exams to gain admission. I feel we should not have more than 2 examinations that write. I wrote JAMB in the 80s. The people who got admission to universities in the 70s did not write JAMB. I wrote JAMB and I wrote WAEC. Now, the generations after us, why are we layering things on them? So I think part of what we should do, I also think part of what we should do is that we should reduce the number of institutions that you need JAMB to gain admission for. Remember, when the JAMB Act was written, it was only targeting universities. You only wrote JAMB if you wanted to go to university in 1978 when the decree was brought out. If you wanted to go to a college of education, you wanted to go to a polytechnic, you only use your WAEC. Then the law was reviewed that today, for you to go to practically any higher institution, you need to write JAMB. I think we need to reverse that. I think JAMB should only focus on university admission. Remember, the name of JAMB, at a point, the exam was University Matriculation Exam. It was under the former registrar, the idea of bringing every school came in. And if you remember, which is what I think is part of the reforms we need, when the idea of bringing in other schools, polytechnic colleges came, there were 2 separate exams. There was an exam for universities, and there was an exam for polytechnics and colleges of education. Then JAMB merged them and just created 1 exam. And if you check the data, because there's all this argument, oh, the trend is consistent. The trend is consistent because you merge 2 exams for 2 categories of people. Why should I want to study medicine? Why should you test me in biology as somebody who wants to become a doctor? The same subject with somebody who wants to go to a college of nursing to become a nurse. Why are we testing maths for the same person who wants to go and study mathematics in university and somebody who wants to go and study architectural design in a polytechnic? Why are we testing the same English for somebody who wants to be a journalist like you and somebody who wants to go and become an engineer? Why are we using the same subject for people doing different courses, for people going to different schools, for people whose careers are not going to be the same? Why are we testing geography, history, biology as if everybody needed it at the same level? Those are the reforms I think we need to do. Get those schools out of there, design a separate way to test those people. Let JAMB focus on University of Admission based on the 1978 decree that was written initially. So the numbers are lesser, the focus is more concentrated, and then people have other alternatives if they don't make JAMB. And of course, the idea of JAMB being allowed to have the result to be for more than 1 year. I think somebody needs to take that decision and say, as from now, I also feel that JAMB should not be written once in a year. I teach in higher institution in Canada. We have admitted two sets of new students is May. By the end, every year we admit 3 sets of new students every year.
Right.
If JAMB is done twice a year, then colleges and universities can admit people in January, in May, and in December, and not one. And then all our complaints around carrying capacity ends because you can bring in more people to the higher education system.
Well, Mr. Fawemi,
I need to correct impression.
Right, quickly, Prof, because we need to wind down, but you can quickly speak to that.
Please, I need to correct that impression. There's an impression you created, and I think that needs to be corrected. Oh, shit.
Prof, you can speak. We need to wind down now, but you can do that quickly.
Sir. Well, I just need to correct the fact that the exam that is written by all is not discriminatory. It is an examination that expects that anyone who passes well will go for whatever course you have chosen. And they don't write the same subjects. Okay, if somebody is, if for every children that applies to JAMB, all of them, the interest is about going to the university, ab initio. But it is at the point of giving them admission that we now have reasons to now push them. If you choose medicine and you cannot qualify for medicine, that's the way it is, sir. I'm in the university system. If you have a score of about 300 and something, and you want medicine, and you have the cutoff mark, you go into medicine. If you can't get that, then you go into the courses that your score qualifies you. That's the way it is. It's not that everybody is writing the same exam. If somebody is going to go into College of Education, for instance, and nobody wrote to come and go to College of Education, but JAMB gave everybody the opportunity to choose. If you cannot go into the university, you choose another polytechnic. If you cannot choose it, then you go to College of Education. That is what JAMB did. And it doesn't make it compulsory and enforceable. So it is about your capacity and what you made out of the examination. That's my understanding of it.
All right. Well, I think the point is clear. We need to ensure that the process doesn't look like it's trying to keep people from getting in. It should be
exactly.
It should be in such a way that it encourages people to get in, because we're trying to educate our people. So if you have to write series of examinations to get into a university when in other clients just have to write one, then it doesn't really taste good. And regarding the validity of UTME results, I know for D is 3 years, but maybe not for JAMB. I know the House of Reps tried to move that to 3 years, but I'm not aware that it's now 3 years, Professor Kola Kazim. It's DE. That is 3 years. That's a statement of result for direct entry.
Oh, I think, well, I don't know whether it is discriminatory, but I think it's a 3-year thing.
Yeah, for direct entry, just for people out there. But again, it's good to have this conversation. I think the point has been made. We need to rethink our admission process. And we have to thank you so much, Professor Kola Kazim and Mr. Yomi Fawemi, for your time on the show today. This is definitely not the end of this conversation. We'll still continue this, but we'll go on a quick break now. When we return, we'll turn our attention to another issue. Please stay with us.